This all started about 7 years ago. I'm sitting across the table from a guy named Jacques Spitzer. He's the founder of Dr. Squatch. At the time, they're 6 years into their business. They're doing $3 million a year. He's frustrated. He's like, man, I've been at this. I can't grow the business. I'm completely dependent on Facebook. And I feel like if they change their algorithm at all, it's my whole business. I gotta get off Facebook. And so we worked together to devise a strategy of how can we start tapping into another channel. At the time, we were trying to figure out, would it be Instagram? Because that was so new at the time. Is it going to be YouTube? Where are we going? Is it gonna be television? Where are we gonna go? And sure enough, we started creating this content that really started to get traction and take off. But the original sort of content that we did for Dr. Squatch still performed better on Meta, at least from Jack's perspective and where we're at. We went on to do a spot for William Painter, which is a sunglass company, and they scaled it hard on YouTube. I mean, they put money behind it to do 50, 60 million views in like 3 months. I mean, they throttled it. And we started talking to William Painter, started talking to Dr. Squatch. We're like, how are you guys figuring out YouTube? And like, well, we started taking this course online. And it turns out that course was put out by, you guessed it, Brett Curry. And so Brett's teaching of YouTube, even 7 years ago, was the reason that some of these brands have been able to have these like massive breakthroughs and really take off. And so my hope today is to share a little bit with you all, a little bit of not only those pieces of stories, but creative that allows people to achieve exit velocity. And when I say exit velocity, I think you guys have all heard the slogan like to the moon, right? It's all of our dreams with our brands is to achieve this feeling that you can continue to spend on these channels and that you can continue to grow more and more. And we'll get into not only how to potentially do that, but also what to look out for to not come crashing back to earth. So Brett shared some of those YouTube statistics before. I'm telling you, if you pay attention, YouTube is silently dominating. And what I mean by that is everything else has been kind of like a fad, or it's been splintering. TikTok comes out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden all the vertical channels are everywhere. Even television is so fractured now, right? Do they even have cable, or do they just watch YouTube TV, or where's everyone getting it? The one thing is that people are on YouTube. Brett mentioned it, I agree. I have an 8-year-old son, his number one channel, he likes YouTube. I make him watch it with me because I don't trust the platform for an 8-year-old. That being said, it's where he wants to get his content. I walked into my parents' house the other day. My dad's sitting there at the computer watching YouTube. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Both ends of the spectrum in my life spend a lot of time on YouTube. I just want to point out, no other channel's doing this, right? No other channel is this spread out. And I'm not here to tell you that YouTube is the best channel, the only channel. But should it be a channel that you grow to learn? Absolutely, if you value having multiple channels to grow your business. And I think that there's a couple challenges, but truly, we are at war for attention, as a brand, as a marketer. People are uploading a lot of content. There's no lack of content. There's no lack of ads. I found this to be incredible. I mean, when you think about how much has changed, even the statistic is about 4 years old at this point. With the rise of vertical video, I imagine that more gets uploaded every day probably now than the last 30 years of network television. I mean, it's not a quality problem anymore. It is a quality problem now, not a quantity problem, right? We have more content than ever. You can watch it in so many different places, but the quality may not be there. And so I'll be your captain today. I'm so bummed because I really wanted to wear an astronaut outfit for this, but my wife told me that would be kind of strange. So talk to me after and tell me what I should have done. But I want to just take you guys through a couple things in case you've never heard of us. So we've been doing this 13, 14 years now. We have had the opportunity to not only win awards, but I'm excited to say that we actually, as of this week, just hit our 16th campaign that's done over 10 million views on YouTube. And the reason, that's not like a magic number by any means. I will say it's a little bit like in the music industry. They have like gold records and platinum records. What it signifies to me is that the brand was able to profitably continue to invest behind an asset that was getting them attention and getting them business. And that's ultimately what matters most. I mean, I look at what we've done so far, and generating over $1 billion in sales, and I'm very proud of that. And I think what's really interesting is that in the recent years, we have been deploying YouTube sooner as a channel. So we've been working with a couple startups, even some that my business partner and I invested in, that have been able to go from $0 in sales to $1 million, $2 million months in less than 18 months. And it never comes on the back of just one channel. You have to hit multiple channels. This is just a grouping of brands that we've done work for. If you've seen ads from some of these brands, we may be part of them. And I will share creative later here that I'm going to break down why it works. And I'm hoping that there's a takeaway for you in that. So here are the 3 reasons we come crashing back down to earth. And I'm going to go over each one of them one at a time. But we have creative, right? I think that's not a surprise to anybody. And we're going to spend a majority of our time looking at creative today. I'm going to be showing you actual videos. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about why it might have worked. And my hope is, a lot of you have come, we got Howie coming all out from New York. A lot of you have come from all over to be here. My hope is that you're going to get a really tangible nugget from seeing some of the work and being like, okay, I'm not going to copy that, but I'm inspired by that because it works and I understand it. And I think that that's probably where we started, even as an agency, was looking at what is working, figuring out why it works, and then you apply it in a new way. That's true of pretty much all marketing, right? We're going to talk about a little bit around like the fact that who buys your advertising does matter. That's also not news to you, but it's especially true for YouTube. I've had people ask me a lot, how much does it matter who you have buying your YouTube ads? And the way that I try to explain it to people is that, when someone's buying your ads, especially when they're buying a lot of ads, they need to understand if they're in tune. There's a really good scene from the movie Whiplash. I'm not sure if you've seen that movie, but there's a whole scene where the guy's playing and he's like, someone here is out of tune, and he ends up kicking this guy out. I should have just brought the clip, but the whole point of it was he says, either someone's sabotaging my band or they're out of tune and they don't even know it. And that's actually worse. And I think that when it comes to media buying, if you want to succeed on some of these channels, please work with someone or partner who understands if they're in tune or not, who has spent, $10,000 a day, $20,000 a day on these platforms. Because if they haven't, then you're working with somebody who's learning using your money. And I don't know about you, but that's not where I want to be, right? I want to be working with somebody who understands, oh, okay, this is in tune, this is not. And I love, Brett, you mentioned you're starting this new co-pilot program. I love that because sometimes you just need someone to let you know if you're on the right path. And then finally, we're going to talk about expectations for attribution. I would say that what's funny is that even though we're responsible for the creative, I would actually say the final one is where a lot of our clients who come in, even some of the biggest brands in the world doing, $500 million, $1 billion, they're most interested in that because it really is the trickiest part of anything that is not specifically what we'll call Google pay-per-click or Meta, right? And so that's what we're going to break down today. And so let's start with the biggest creative mistakes to avoid. So I have this saying that I tell myself quite a bit, and there's a couple that we'll want to make sure we take away. But when you focus more on what you want to say than what people actually want to hear, that's not a marketing truth, that's a communication truth, right? Like, no one wants to talk to somebody who only wants to talk about themselves. And that's true of your advertising. And we're going to break down what that looks like and feels like and how to avoid it. A lot of people also forget the context in which their ads are going to be running. One of my favorite things to say to people is that our ad, if it's for YouTube, is going to be in front of a Mr. Beast video, or pick your poison in terms of the best creators out there. I'm asking someone to wait to watch that content in order to watch our ad. So our ad better be pretty damn good if I'm asking them to watch it before they watch a Mr. Beast video, right? The bar is much higher. And I think that's one of the stumbling blocks that people have, is that you can get away with some pretty lazy advertising on certain channels, especially if it's more bottom of funnel. So you're running an Amazon ad, you're running a Google ad, and it's like, well, someone's already searching, it's bottom of funnel, you're not generating demand. Or on Meta, you can run a beautiful photo and do millions of dollars in sales, right? We've all seen it, or we're aware that that's possible. But in order to even compete on a video-based platform, you got to bring your A game, right? You got to bring great creative. So I'm curious, most of you drove in today, and I am going to make you raise your hand. I know Brett asked, and if you don't raise your hand, I'm going to be looking right at you. My question is this: how many of you remember passing any specific car on the way here? You do. All right. I was wondering. So we got a couple people. So I guess my next question for you, if you don't mind me calling you out, what kind of car was it?
A G-Wagon.
A G-Wagon.
Brand Boost G-Wagon.
Okay. So like a nicer car, something that would stand out. Yeah. So the reason I'm asking this question is that what's crazy is most of you did not raise your hand. You drove here and you don't remember a single car that you saw, right? And that's because your brain has something called the reticular activating system, meaning it shuts off most of the information coming into your brain. It has to. Imagine if you remembered every car on the way here. And I often give the example of a green Lamborghini, should be a G-Wagon, because a lot of times when people will drive, they'll notice certain cars because there's something different about them. Oh, I know for me when I'm driving, if I were to see a green Lamborghini, my mind would go to, oh, there's a green Lamborghini. That's a bold choice, very, very bright. It's like, I wonder if I hit that car, what would happen to my insurance premiums? I start wondering all these things. I'm like, I wonder what they do for work. They probably invested in crypto. I'm just thinking all these things. And so, but I want you to think about how powerful that is. That you did not notice any specific car on the way here. You passed hundreds, if not thousands of vehicles, depending on how long you drove this morning, and you've forgotten them all already. That's our challenge when it comes to advertising. And so the most potent way to create a green Lamborghini is what I'm about to share with you. You may have heard this, and I want you to shout out the answer if you know it. You may have heard that people don't buy your what, they buy your why, right? And so this is a breakthrough Simon Sinek shared roughly 10 years ago. And what we found, what we started thinking about 7 years ago, was that this is actually fundamentally flawed and untrue. And I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but this is the difference between a gray Honda Civic and a green Lamborghini. People don't buy your why, they buy their own why. So remember earlier I mentioned that a lot of times we want to talk about who we are, why we're great, and everything else. That's fine. But ultimately, people make purchasing. Everything that we do, everything we buy, is a reflection of who we believe we are or who we're striving to become, right? And so when we start an ad campaign, our team is dialed into this. We're like, what's their why? Write it out. There's probably 5 to 6 answers why they would be buying what it is that you sell. Everything provides some value in people's lives, even if it's as simple as let's say you get a Mont Blanc pen, right? I'm literally making this up right now, but it's like you get a Mont Blanc pen, a pen writes, a lot of pens write. Why Mont Blanc? Well, you can imagine it makes someone feel a certain way about themselves. And maybe it gives them confidence in their business and decision making. There's a lot of power in that feeling, and that ultimately comes from their why. And so these are just a couple kind of tidbits that I want you to think about. Maybe as you look at your own advertising, are we making this mistake? A lot of times, a big red flag for me is if brands are saying, well, join us, or we do this, instead of you, right? You'll notice when you check out a lot of our creative in a little bit, a lot of it is designed to say you, person on the other end of that screen, because that's who we're speaking to. But it's amazing how many brands will start paying attention, will say, oh, join us, we this. That is fundamentally not what someone wants to hear when they're on the other end. The other thing I see a lot is, I call them B-roll staging shots, just beautiful sweeping shots of a campus university or whatever that looks like, where ultimately what they're trying to do with the commercial is say, well, let's create this context so that when you get to the actual part of it, it makes more sense or you're ready for it. And I'm like, no, we don't have time to create sweeping context and all this, because that's, again, what you're saying to the audience is, I want you to be prepared to hear from me instead of let me just start connecting with you immediately. That has to be the goal. And then the use of wide shots versus close-up shots. This is something that I learned, 6-7 years ago that we've seen over and over again, is that the wider the shot is, the less connection there is. And I'll give you some examples as we go, but what I mean by a wide shot is if there's 3 or 4 people in a shot versus a close-up on a face, you're gonna pay attention a lot more to the face than if there's 3 or 4 people, you're like, well, where do I look and what's happening? I mentioned earlier that the context matters, and I think a lot of times as brands, we take ourselves very, very, very seriously, as we should. But I think we also need to recognize that there has to be different versions of us for different environments. I always say that there's a different version of me at a wedding than there is maybe giving a toast at a friend's wedding. Wait, I'm just at weddings now? I'm like, I gotta give other examples here. In different environments, I'm still me, but I show up a little bit differently. And if you're going to get involved on YouTube, this is just I think this, but know that you're competing with makeup tutorials and sports clips and other high entertainment pieces, right? And you're asking someone to stick around and watch. And I will tell you, the day that I figured out that YouTube can change the trajectory of a business, when I started seeing the average watch times on some of these ads. So for context, a lot of them are longer form in nature, 2 to 3 minutes, and we were seeing average watch times of 30 seconds, 40 seconds, meaning you can skip after 5, but the average person is watching 40 seconds of that ad. And I go, whoa. We'll compound that by tens of millions of views. You can see how that can completely change everything. But you have to remind yourself that, hey, I'm competing with makeup tutorials. I'm competing with Mr. Beast videos. And so the question that we often get to is, does my brand have to be funny to sell on YouTube? No, but it has to be entertaining, right? And I can't stress that enough. I think that was one of the things that I wanted to make sure I doubled down on today was humor is such a great sticky tool for advertising. It allows you to say things that may be offensive otherwise. It allows you to do a lot of things, but you can be entertaining without being funny. And we have one version of an ad here in a bit that I'm going to show you. And then the final mistake that I think holds most brands back, and this is for all online advertising. This is not a YouTube specific thing, but it is a must for YouTube, is that for thousands of years, we've told stories with this arc. For thousands of years. I mean, think about it, every book, every movie ever written pretty much follows this sort of graph, where you start with some sort of lead-in, it builds, there's a big climax to reveal, and then, in this case, because it's an ad, there's some sort of offer or like branded moment. You'll see this a lot still with 30-second ads, and I'm not saying you can't use this formula, but you can't use this formula for a YouTube ad. And you can't use this formula for a TikTok ad or for a Meta ad. This arc is, it's broken. All right, so when we create creative, we are thinking about the fact that it has to break through the noise visually. It has to be a compelling story, which if you're out there right now thinking to yourself like, am I really going to muster up the energy to figure out YouTube, right, as a channel? Maybe you're here today asking yourself that. I would say just the act of trying to figure out will make you such a better storyteller for your brand. It will have a positive impact on your business. And then of course, if you can get the channel itself to scale for you, then it has ultimate upside. But just the act of trying to figure out the platform will make you a better marketer. And then you have to honor people's attention. I mean, we really, like at the end of the day, if I'm watching one of our own ads, I'm like thinking to myself, would I stick around for this? Am I honoring even my own attention? Are we honoring the attention of people watching it? And I think the best ads that we create give people something. So meaning, Brett talked about people will forward our ads to people and stuff like that. I think that that's the ultimate, like when you can create something that people want to share with other people. And one of my favorite things to see is brands that are, 6, 7, 10 years into their journey, and they actually make their first creative that their own audience wants to share with people. Because no one's like sharing your UGC ads or whatever, right? Your still images. When you create something that gets them going, yeah, like I love this product, it's really powerful. So we've seen the traditional story arc. I'm just gonna add that it does assume attention, and it assumes some sort of response to that, right? And that's dangerous. That is a dangerous arc for online storytelling. So this is what I think we're calling the new digital story arc. And what it requires is this idea of like starting high, starting with some sort of energy. A lot of people will call this a hook, which I think it's fair, it is a hook. But one of the breakthroughs I've actually had in just the last 6 months is that I think it's so important to create connection with people that it supersedes the need to sell. So I'm about to show you 5 of our best performing ads ever. And what I started realizing was that a lot of them don't introduce the brand until 15 seconds in, 20 seconds in, right? Like it's not like, hey, it's a commercial, watch me now. It's like, oh, this is a problem statement, something you're experiencing. Oh, by the way, we have this solution. Oh, by the way, back to entertainment. That really started changing my mind, I think, a little bit. I always knew it to be true, but it's hard to have confidence to say, oh man, let's wait 10, 12 seconds, 15 seconds before saying, hey, here's the brand, right? That feels scary when you're like, but what if people skip it and they never see my brand? And so it's a little bit of chicken and the egg. I'm just saying, having seen some of these ads, scale brands by tens of millions of dollars in short periods of time, connection matters most. And then what you're gonna see is that we have this offer resolution. for today, I didn't bring full longer form videos, but you'll notice that a lot of them will have a moment of call to action, even though the video is not over yet. Because Brett mentioned it earlier, ultimately you want someone stopping what they're doing and taking an action. They're not here to see your ad. They happen to see your ad, right before that Mr. Beast video they're about to watch. And now they're like, well, shoot, you got my attention. I guess I will go check it out. And so asking for that is absolutely critical.
We really had our hands full with our
Can I go back? There we go. So what I want to do is I want to share with you a difference between two ads that one follows traditional story arc, other one new digital story arc, and then I want you to ask you a couple questions about how those experiences were. Okay? So here's the first ad.
We really had our hands full with our 2-year-old.
Yeah, so naturally, we doubled down with the new puppy.
Sure, they're twice as cute together, but now we've got double the stains.
And double the odors.
Thankfully, we also have Tide Ultra Oxy with odor eliminators.
It can handle double trouble because it's the #1 stain fighter.
And the #1 odor remover.
I thought you guys were helping.
For the #1 stain fighter and odor remover, it's got to be Tide.
All right, that's an ad, right? It's an ad. We didn't make that ad, but that is an ad. I'm going to show you a second ad. This is for I guess it'd be technically a competing product, although I wouldn't say they're direct competitors. But let's check out this next ad. This next one is one we did create.
Unfortunately, it's really good.
My life was simple, predictable, routine.
My boyfriend wanted to try it. Said he saw it on the internet. I should have known.
And it's ruined everything else for me.
When I started using.
From the second I started using laundry sauce, the world's best smelling laundry pods, lost my girlfriend, got 4 new ones.
I lost my job in middle management. They made me CEO. So much power.
People just can't get enough of this Indonesian patchouli.
French saffron.
Australian sandalwood.
Egyptian rose.
Siberian pine.
And other smells have become meaningless.
Get out of my life, you beautiful smelling pod!
I never used to think about laundry.
It was just a boring chore.
Now I can't stop.
If you value your alone time,
If you want your life to stay exactly like it is and never change or get better,
If you want your laundry day to stay boring,
If you want your laundry and your life to smell average,
If you don't want to feel like a literal movie star every time you do laundry,
don't go to laundrysauce.com.
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 So I want to ask you a quick question. First ad you saw, a Tide ad. How many of you would recall ever having seen that ad 6 months from now? Right? I mean, I'm not trying to be rude. That thing is a gray Honda Civic, right? It is. Like, it is. How many of you may remember having seen this ad 6 months from now? Yeah, I see a lot of nodding hands, a lot of hands going up, a lot of nodding heads. And what's interesting is that ad may feel pretty crazy, right? Which it is a little bit, but it was inspired by a still image of a real client testimonial that was just, unfortunately, it's really effing good. That was the client testimonial, and it was getting the highest click-through rate. And so we decided to make an entire campaign based off of that insight, right? The fact that people responding to that. And I think what's interesting about a brand like Laundry Sauce is, their average order value is above $100, right? They're selling a luxury-based product, and I think you can do things in a way that still allow you to sell on all of these channels, again, showing up in a way that makes sense for your brand. And I share that as a one-to-one example of like what I'm talking about, traditional story arc, how that feels versus new story arc. And you also notice a little bit of the cursing in that. Not everything we do has cursing, but it is a pattern interrupt. You probably heard that term before. If you haven't, it's like you're just going through your day, you're just going through your viewing experience. Sometimes having a bleep or a cuss word is something that makes people sort of like shake out of their sort of monotonous scroll they're in. And it may create more connection at times. There are 3 other sort of story arcs that we see that work. Brett showed one earlier for the beard company, Le Bearded. That was what we call a straight offer, where they just go straight headfirst into, hey, I have this great offer, let's talk about it. We've seen this be successful over the years. Vincero, it's a watch company we worked with. They use this type of thing where they started with, are you looking for the best watch under $200? Like boom, straight into the offer. We also see product demo-led videos do well if they're very visual. We work with there's a group called Dogface. They have this kind of, I don't know what you would call it, but it shines like a red light as you massage, and so things that are very visual, if you have a product that's very visually oriented, you want to see it in those first 3 to 5 seconds. That's what's going to create that sense of intrigue. And so, and then the explainer is more very traditional. I would say if you've heard of the term VSL or video sales letter, it's like really starting with some sort of problem statement. A lot of ours will move between these different formulas, and I know no one likes the idea of a formula when it comes to creative, but I'd also say there is certain recipes, just like in cooking, where you have to have certain things for it to work, right? And so the formulas do matter. And as I was reflecting on, people will ask questions like, well, it's not like every campaign we ever do is a home run, right? I wish that were the case, but the reality is we have the highest batting average in the world right now. So why? Like, how does that happen? And it's because of the amount of time we spend before we write a single word, right? Most people, I want to make an ad, they just like dive in. What do I want to say? Let me write it down. Let me write out the script. And I think that the majority of what we're doing, the hard work of what we're doing, is figuring out, why the heck would you even want to watch this ad? What's the context it's going to live in? How are we going to connect with somebody before we've written a single word? What we want to say does matter, but it doesn't matter unless people are paying attention. And I can't stress that enough, but that needs to be your number one goal. Without attention, you can't sell anything, especially when people can skip it. And I think that that's what I love about YouTube, is that it's that meritocracy of, I can skip it. I mean, you can make a really bad TV commercial and pay billions of dollars to get it out there, right? Like, we've all experienced those ads where, like, seriously, you're running that ad again? That doesn't exist on a platform like YouTube. So I want to take you through a couple quick tips as we get ready to digest more creative. One thing that I always say is that 10 seconds, a good 10 seconds of advertising only earns you another 10 seconds. We're having a conversation with a client recently where they're like, can we remove that joke and put like a couple more USPs, a couple more value propositions there? And I was like, well, here's the thing, you can, but people will stop watching, so which one do you want to do? There really is a sense of pacing that matters where, yes, you need to give people information about your brand, but you also don't have, just because you have a great hook, doesn't mean that they'll then give you 20 or 30 more seconds of their time. It really is a sort of like 10 seconds at a time. Yes, we're going to move quickly with cuts. One of my favorite things to point out to people is that you've heard people have short attention spans. And I'm like, no, they don't. We don't have short attention spans, but we have short consideration spans. Meaning you'll sit there and watch a 20, 30-minute video on YouTube. Like, you don't have a short attention span, but you're not going to sit around and wait for it to get interesting, right? You have a short consideration span. You're going to be waiting for it to continue to deliver value. And then we're always looking to shake people out of their mindset. You've heard mindless scroll. Like, no one's there to see your ad. We better get their attention. I mentioned earlier the idea of cutting in on faces and faces being so important. We do a lot of videos that are more, we'll call it like lead to camera driven. It's not the only way to make a great ad, but the reality is you need to create a sense of connection through that screen with people. We also try to sit around a 6th grade reading level, which is funny because I would say some of our writers are some of the most brilliant people I know. And we laugh because we'll have all sorts of we had this like stupid discussion forever about the term carpaccio, where I was telling them like, guys, we got to cut the carpaccio line. Like people don't know what carpaccio is. And I'm like, people know what carpaccio is. And now I got to know, how many of you know what carpaccio is? Like half the room? Okay, you guys are smart though. That's what I'm saying. You're all above the 6th grade reading level. You're here at Google today. It's actually a joke that now, years later, they'll be like, oh, is it too carpaccio for you? And I'm like, yeah. Because the reality is that people are at this 6th grade reading level, and this is when you take in a broader consideration set of just the world, you have to be really aware of how simple we make our language. And then we actually have been using emojis more and more in our work. Again, just creating that sense of connection with people. If you text your friends, you probably use emojis. I'd ask you how many times you've used emojis in your ads recently. It's probably less than how much you actually use to text your friends. And then validation. So if I'm putting together a recipe for success, especially with a YouTube video or something that's a little bit longer in nature, I love to get these reviews in there, testimonials. We do a lot of stuff that's like person on the street reaction videos where you get to a sense of the senses through the camera screen with what you're doing there. And then, just people respond to other people when they see people reacting well. They want to know more. And one final thing I'll mention before we look at a little more content here is that all of our decisions are fundamentally emotional. And this was something that I probably think about this once a month at least when it comes to the work we do, which is there's a great book called Never Split the Difference. And it's by a guy named Chris Voss. It's about negotiation. And he talks about this study that was done where people who have access or lack access to certain emotions in their brain, they studied those people, and a lot of them can tell you about decisions they should make, but they have trouble making decisions. And the conclusion of that was that 100% of your final actual taking action is an emotional decision. It's kind of like propane and having a spark, right? And so what you'll feel from all the advertising that we're going to show is that sense of emotion and high energy, because we want to spark people into creating a sense of connection and move. So I mentioned earlier, but I'm going to show 5 ads here. I want you to focus on a couple of different things. One, I want you to feel those opening 10 to 15 seconds of the hook. A lot of times we haven't even introduced the product yet. I want you to feel the sense of edutainment. It's a word we use for educating and entertaining, and how it pulls you in as a viewer. And then I want you to feel the kind of the pacing and the pattern interrupts, how we do things that feel random. Those random pieces are critically important. And so the first ad I'm going to show, again, this is just going to be like the first 1/3 of it, is for a product called the GT Revolution with Works. The reason I chose to show this one was not only was it extremely successful, but it starts with such a great example of starting with their why, right? I can't wait to show you in here in a moment. It also introduces a problem and solution statement, and then much like a traditional sort of 30-minute infomercial, we get into a little bit of comparing your current way of doing it and the old way of doing it. So let's watch the first minute of that ad here.
Do you want a perfect lawn? Does a sloppy yard make you want to just... Me too. Yard work is hard work, but it doesn't have to be. This is the GT Revolution, a 3-in-1 trimmer, edger, and mini mower that makes yard perfection easy. Your old grass trimmer doesn't cut it.
This sucks, and I'm gray.
Of course you are. Your tools are outdated and awkward while you're trying to be efficient and precise. But the GT is lightweight and powerful, like a pillow that knows karate. It's so light and easy, even my Nana can use it.
I came to cut grass and chew bubblegum. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
I was just testing Nicole when I was preparing for this, saying, we got to get you back as Nana because she did a great job with that. But that opening of, do you want a perfect lawn and does a sloppy yard make you just crazy? Thing is that not everyone feels that way, but people that would buy that product feel that way. And that was a really powerful example of just starting with someone's why. And again, 100% of people are not going to watch this ad. But how do we end up with, we'll call it 10% of people watching the entirety of the ad, even though they didn't, they're not being paid to watch it, they're getting served this ad. It's because we've honored their attention with all these little moments and things that are giving them chuckles and moments as they're learning about the product. This next one is an ad that ended up becoming the #1 ad of all of 2020 on YouTube. It did, 300-400 million scalable views on YouTube. And it really changed the whole trajectory of the Dr. Squatch business. Is this video that you may or may not have seen around Dr. Squatch Save Your Skin. What's interesting is it's a mashup video, meaning we had taken pieces of other ads we'd created for them and created this mashup video for them. And what you're going to feel is that it starts with a strong problem statement, but then what it also does is it brings in a lot of social proof. And I think that this is an interesting formula. A lot of times when we're working with brands, we'll be wanting to create different types of content. And I think brands that rely heavily on the senses, things that you smell or touch or taste, we're going to want to bring those through the screen. So how do I convince you it smells good if you can't smell it, right? You're on your mobile device or you're on your laptop. And so you're going to get a sense of how this works. And again, aspects of it seem random. As this video goes on, I promise you, it just gets more and more random. It's a 5-minute ad. So you can look it up later if you want to see the whole thing. But feel how it bounces between high production value and low production value. It gives you a really good sense of this brand being exciting, but also being something real.
You're not a dish. You're a man. Most name brand bars and body washes you rub on your skin are classified by the FDA as synthetic detergent. It's not even real soap. Start treating your body to the natural, nourishing, lathery goodness of Dr. Squatch soap. Get ready to step out of the shower feeling alive.
That smells really good.
It smells like my guy's cologne.
Okay.
It smells really good, yeah.
Smells
really sexy.
Oh, that smells really good. I would use it, but if a guy smelled like that too, I'd be like, oh.
If my man was wearing this, I would be all over him.
It's natural. It's kind of like being in a forest.
I would use this on myself.
Way better than the regular store-bought soap.
I'm talking about natural, nourishing, cold-pressed, hand-cut soap for men.
That's so dumb. You know what's funny too is the arm wrestling scene was something that we originally shot when we were out there, and it was there was no use for it at the time. We just had it. It ended up becoming part of this. And what I'll say is one of my biggest reflections on working with Dr. Squatch is we're not selling soap. We are selling joy in a mundane experience, which is your shower experience. And so that's why something as random as a funny scene of people arm wrestling works, because it makes you smile to yourself when you get that soap. When you use the soap, you think of that ad, it makes you feel something that you wouldn't have otherwise. And it feels dumb and silly, but it is fun. And life's meant to be enjoyed. So what you've already probably experienced and seen is that people will ask me, does it have to be high production value? And my answer to that is not necessarily. However, I think there's a reality that just as seeing they say, and I think it's true, that when you see certain things on television, it creates a level that you're at as a brand to the consumer, a level of trust, right? And I think that having certain production value does convey trust for people to the brand. And that's why I wanted to share this video we're about to share, because I think a lot of brands have advertising that works, right? You can we were having a conversation just before this, you can get to 20, 30, 40 million dollars in sales behind UGC and still images on Meta and a mix of TikTok, right? It's not that it's not possible to grow a brand without high-level content, but it does help you to become a little bit more of that green Lamborghini. It helps you to create that stickiness in people's mind. Because think about your favorite brands right now. I guarantee you, if you think about their advertising, like if you just take a moment and think about it, you're not thinking about a UGC piece you saw. You're not thinking about a still image you saw on Meta. You were thinking about something they created that was memorable. And something that Dossier, when we worked together, it was interesting because they were like, we're not funny, we don't want to be funny. And they were open to testing different hooks. This is one that won out. But one of the things that was really interesting is, like, by definition, their brand could be seen as a knockoff. I mean, they create inspired scents. So I didn't know this until we started working together, that you can't patent a scent, right? So anyone can reverse engineer a scent, and that's why there's so many of these scents out there that create, inspired by, and as long as you use the language inspired by, you're good. And so this ad, scaled by, millions a month, and it's a really great example of something that is like, it's simple, it's classy, you can feel how it still follows some heartbeat, but it is not overly goofy or silly. There's no arm wrestling scene, we'll say, in this one. So check it out.
Sick of designer brands keeping your favorite scents out of reach?
Oh, darling, that scent was just made for you. At least a richer version of you.
You deserve better. This is Dossier. Luxury quality scents at a price you can afford. Because guess what? Fragrance can't be patented. So your favorite scent doesn't belong to a brand. With Dossier, it belongs to you. For the cost of a single bottle of this designer brand, you can get all this. We've got over a dozen different scent categories for men and women. From posh aquatic to floral palettes to luscious woodsy aromas. All inspired by the iconic scents you know and love. By brands like Chanel, Creed, Tom Ford, and so many more. We dare you to smell the difference.
All right, so that, again, similar, the similarities there is going to be connection, it's going to be pacing, but in this case, we leaned a little bit more into attitude. I think that, I love how she rips it off, and there's a kind of a rebellious nature to it. And so, again, wanted to bring these different options and variations, because as you're figuring out what might work for my brand, I want you to be able to see what's out there. And then I want to share with you Bones Coffee. This is a coffee brand that has exploded the last couple of years. It's been so cool being part of their journey. They just launched in Walmart this week, and they've grown by, I don't know, $60, $70 million since we've been working together. And this campaign was what allowed them to start being multi-channel. A lot of times, when we think about creating a YouTube campaign, we never call it that at Raindrop. It is a campaign, right? Meaning we create a lot of times cut downs and variations for Meta. We create them for, whether you're running TikTok or YouTube Shorts. You want to take a holistic look at all the channels you're going to run in, and you want to see it as an asset, not just an ad, right? A lot of times when you make an ad, it's just an ad. When you have an asset, it means it's telling your whole story. I think this is an interesting one because the brand, it's the only ad that I can think of where we actually have a really low energy lead, right? It was inspired by the woman from Park and Rec, April from Parks and Rec, just kind of this like really low energy alternative sort of vibe. And we also are able to use humor to say some things that would like feel too on the nose. I love the line, is your coffee leaving you dead inside? And just this idea of like how boring coffee can become because they're a flavored coffee company. And then you also notice in this ad that we take the objection head on. It's one of the mechanisms that you can use because people are already thinking something. So when you can kind of snap that out of them, it's really powerful.
What's the difference between these two identical cups of coffee? Everything. Everything. Boring, basic coffee is leaving you dead inside. Thank the Dark Lord, there's Bones Coffee. Small batch, full-bodied coffee infused with the most mind-melting flavors in the world. Or underworld.
Oh, I've had flavored coffee.
Oh, I've had flavored coffee before. You haven't had Welcome to the highly caffeinated, slightly wicked, and immortally delicious world of Bones. Our mad coffee scientists have twisted nature to their demented wills.
It's alive!
With frightfully delicious flavors like from dusk till donuts.
By the way, if you try that till dusk till donuts, it'll blow your mind. It tastes like you just took a bite of a jelly donut and washed it down with coffee. I don't know how they do it. It's not in a mad science lab like that, but it is pretty incredible. And so I'm hoping what you're feeling there is, it was really interesting to have it be so challenging up front, right? That's the emotion of, I bet you've never seen this. I bet you've never experienced this. And so people that tend to be a little bit more competitive may react to an ad like that. The final one I'm going to showcase is one that has a more empathetic opening. And we see this is kind of a critical, especially if you have like a female forward audience, empathy is absolutely critical in the opening. If you're like a bombastic, challenging opening, a lot of times it won't work for women. We had one of our best performing ads was for a brand called Sugar Me Smooth. They were here at the last event, and their best performing opening was a line that said it's a product that removes hair from the body. And the best performing opening was either you have hair and you love it, or you have it and you want it gone, right? And so by not coming out and being like, hair is gross, you need to get rid of it, but by saying like, if you have it and you like it, cool. And if you don't, like, we have a solution for that. Changed literally everything with the business. And so I wanted to just point out the role of empathy, especially with female audiences, is absolutely critical. We also, we had the opportunity in this case to utilize a centaur, which is a really bold and unique choice. The thing that I've noticed about the centaur, which is interesting, is when I tell people we've worked with Native for the last couple years, they'll be like, oh, do you guys make the centaur ads? It's like they run ads of, so many different ads, UGC, stills, different campaigns. There is something very memorable about the centaur. It was a big swing. And then you'll also notice that this whole campaign that we did for them is designed to address objections head on. Which in this case was, hey, does a natural deodorant actually work? And so that's what we're gonna check out.
Whew, my patchouli's wearing off.
Oh, my favorite shirt is ruined.
I'm also not satisfied.
Humans.
Whoa.
I know, right?
You smell amazing.
Thanks. It's Native.
Clean, effective, all-day deodorant.
Made with simple ingredients derived from nature.
Natural deodorant that actually works? That's just a myth.
Like Santa Claus or owning a home.
A myth? Hey! It's Native.
Oh my gosh, I love that guy in the middle. He gets me every time. That line where he's like Santa Claus or owning a home. Man, that hurts. It's super fun, but I hope you know, just such different ways of getting in. And I will say, we'll talk about it a little bit, the one thing you're not seeing is, we always create at least 2, if not up to 5 openings for a campaign, because ultimately they're all going to work differently. And no matter how many times you do this, and I know if you're in charge of any marketing, like you can have all the best intentions possible, but the metrics will tell you if it's working, right? And so we try to stay humble enough to go, okay, what are we testing? How do we figure out what is and isn't working? I want to do a little section here on how long commercials should be. So if you are a company that is highly based on brand awareness and you're not asking for any sort of conversion in the moment, 6 and 15s are going to be great for you. If you're heavy at retail, if you are a retail-based business, you can do a lot of 6 and 15s. If you're someone who is selling online, 6 and 15s are going to be a waste of money. You're going to want to focus on the 1 to 4 minute videos, and I'm going to kind of give you a sense of why. So I love these moments. I'm sure you've all had moments like this where I was reading this book and I saw this quote: general advertisers use 30-second commercials, but direct response fraternity have learned it's more profitable to use 2-minute commercials. Who do you suppose is to be more likely to be right? In their magazine advertisements, general advertisers use short copy, but direct response people invariably use long copy. Who do you suppose is more likely to be right? I'm convinced that if all advertisers were to follow the example of their direct response brethren, they would get more sales per dollar. So who said this in what year? Can you imagine me reading this and being like, oh my God, like this is somebody who like, they really understand. I feel like they understand my soul. They understand like how I feel about advertising. Like, how is this person like the best advertiser in the world for the internet era? You know, this was before I was born. Ogilvy, one of the most famous marketers, said this in 1983. No internet yet, right? He's just pointing out the power of spending 1 to 2 or 3 minutes with an audience compared to a short amount of time. And then as I've applied, like, well, but why? Well, having a longer video does a couple things. One, it gives people enough information about your service to pre-qualify them, to get them to a point where like they've already done a little bit of the mental gymnastics. They're not on a landing page trying to figure things out. I think the second one is probably the most missed, which is it builds a connection with the brand, not just a solution. So for instance, if you sell, whatever you're selling, if other products exist on Amazon, right, that's similar to yours, or on Google, like unless you've sold them your brand, well now all you've done is educate them on the solution and then they go squirt off and buy something that's cheaper or different. You wanna make sure they buy your brand. And so the more time they spend with you, the more they're like, yeah, I'm in, I want that brand. And then it's interesting psychologically, and this is what we do at the end of some of our videos. We'll be like, hey, you've been here for 3 minutes. Why don't you actually, we know you're interested. Why don't you click the link? We don't quite say it that way, but it's like, that's the idea. And I've noticed that people are pot committed. I mean, they've spent all that time. Clearly, I've already shown you I'm interested. It just helps to get people converting. And I'm gonna end with helping to paint the picture. You know, this is all of what takes to figure out, you know, this isn't just specific to YouTube, but like, is my top of funnel advertising working? It's not just one metric that you can pull in. And I think that that's where people get discouraged and they just never really get started, is they're like, well, I just can't prove it's working. I can't prove it's working better than Meta or my bottom of funnel, you know, Google or Amazon ads. I just give up, right? And so I don't want you to give up. I want you to understand that this is the picture we're gonna paint. I'm gonna go through all the channels real quick. So the first is click-through rates are going to be lower on YouTube ads. A lot of people will be watching the ad either on the connected television or on their phone, and then they'll open a new browser tab and they'll visit the site through a direct response, or they'll go to Amazon, they'll go to other places. And so your click-through rates are always gonna look way lower. Because your click-through rates are gonna look lower, it's always gonna look like it's underperforming compared to Meta. And so you're like, well, why would I put $1 there if I could put it into Meta? Meta's doing better. The other thing that we tend to see is that Brett mentioned branded search lift. This has been one of, I'd say, 2 of the best indicators. Is we have a company that we're working with right now, went from $0 months to $2 million months in like 7 months, right? And there's a moment where they're like, we know our YouTube's doing well, but like, how do we really know it's doing well? And we looked at when they started throttling their YouTube spend, and we looked at their branded search results, and it follows a chart much like this, right? Where people ultimately are going to be seeing it, either on their television or whatever, and they're gonna go directly to the website, or they're gonna Google the brand itself. And so that's part of what makes this so confusing, is that they're not just clicking the link. Even though you tell them to click the link, that's not the user behavior on the platforms. And I think what's nice is for people that spend a lot on television, they don't expect people to do that, right? That's not their expectations. But I think the YouTube expectation is that I'll be able to look at a dashboard and feel 100% confident that it's beating my Meta numbers for some reason. And don't get me wrong, like the North Beams of the world help. And OMG Commerce, as an agency, will be able to help you navigate, like what's what are healthy numbers, because your numbers may look different for YouTube as a platform. And then I can't stress enough post-purchase survey data. I mean, the amount of insights that you can get from post-purchase is absolutely incredible. When we started getting to know Trevor and Mark and their team, some of the functions and features that they have really changed just so many ways that people do post-purchase. They have incentives for people to finish it. They also have, like, let's say a lot of times brands will have something like this and people say, well, how'd you hear about us? And people say, oh, a referral or a friend. Well, they can help build a survey for you that when people click that, they say, okay, well, what did that friend tell you that made you want to buy? And so you can actually start getting information and mine information that can change your advertising. But when we see brands that are doing well, they're looking at their direct traffic list and their branded search lift, and then they're also looking at their post-purchase survey data, and they're kind of triangulating, okay, like as I'm ramping YouTube, these things are also lifting. They're also looking at their average watch times. Brett mentioned that if you run a couple different variations, which I can't stress enough, if you're going to run campaigns, run a couple variations of the ad. And if you start seeing some major differences in watch times, it's going to give you a sense of like what's really working, even more than things like potentially even a click-through rate. And I'm out of time, but I'm going to share with you one thing that we're going to be kind of testing in the future, which is QR calls to action on YouTube ads. This is very, very new, but I think with what Brett was pointing out with connected television being such a big channel now for YouTube, we're going to start working into some of them and testing them. QR codes like this. This is an ad that scaled to 50, 60 million views. We did not make it, but they have this QR code they pop up, and I want you to feel how it's like another subtle call to action, and it's actually a pretty good sort of offer that they pop up.
Wearing enough layers to insulate Alaska. That's why you need the new and improved bearskin hoodie. The 6-pocket bearskin fleece tactical hoodie that blocks wind and regulates heat for incredible comfort wherever you are.
There it is.
Thousands of men across the world already love wearing the bearskin hoodie instead of their regular hoodies.
Perfect. And then Brett shared the UGC split screen earlier. If you already have UGC, that's a great way to repurpose it to create something new, to have multiple things going on at the same time. We put out a quarterly report absolutely for free at Raindrop, and this is something that we put a lot of time and energy into. We showcase a lot of these insights. If it's something today that you enjoyed and wanted to make sure I called that out. And then if you wanted to get in touch with myself or our team, there's another QR code up there, and I would love to do so. I'll be around the rest of the day, and just appreciate you all allowing me to share, and I hope you have some inspiration for your next ad. Thank you.